It's been 2 weeks and U.S. Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl is finally getting a glimpse of the raging debate over the details of his capture and the Taliban prisoner swap that secured his release. Some of Bergdahl's fellow former soldiers have portrayed him as a deserter who walked off a remote outpost in eastern Afghanistan in June of 2009, before he was captured by the Taliban. Other critics say the 5 Taliban detainees transferred out of Guantanamo Bay to Qatar in the exchange for Bergdahl were too dangerous to go free. I'm contemplating these issues. I have with me on my left Jeff Bloom, who's a professional mediator and an Air Force veteran. And him and I will discuss the possibilities of what we feel as veterans, because we're both veterans, as to how we feel about the whole thing. And basic raw reaction to this. As a veteran, I think we have, and you were a veteran, I think, of
the Air Force.
Yes. What war did you say? What?
I was in both Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom.
Okay. So, you know, at least certainly the nature of where you were is not far apart.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Iraqi Freedom being the most recent one, you know, with in response to 9/11,
right,
when we deployed and everything. So, yeah, it's a very hot button issue. What's going on with this case? I was very surprised when I heard it. Even
right.
Before I heard that he was possibly deserted, or that there were people that went out and looked for him and died in the process. 5 terrorists for one of ours set the alarms off immediately right. To me. And then most recently, Hillary Clinton made a statement saying that these 5 terrorists that were released aren't a danger or a threat to anybody. I mean, really? Yeah. That's not what a terrorist is? And I don't know what book she's looking in.
If I heard that word, I would have said the same thing. I hope she didn't put those 2 words together. But, you know, Kerry said the same thing. He's a Secretary of State. And he said, well, we can watch them or something, and when they do something, then there'll be a problem.
Oh, really?
Isn't it surprising?
Yeah. Well, we were watching the ones that pull off 9/11, right?
Right.
That was planning in the process of 5 years when they were planning that, and there were signs and things that were going on with the pilot lessons and them being in the States,
Sure.
and then they kind of lost track of them, and so so much for that idea.
And by the way, the big one for me was they learned how to fly planes to take off but not to land. That was a big warning sign for me.
Oh, it was just amazing. To me, it was amazing that they were able to pull that off, with the planning and everything. And, we had a lot of briefings and stuff when I was in the military in regards to being deployed after all this happened, and, stuff, a lot of the things I can't share, but just the sheer magnitude of having the patience for 5 years to plan this and
Sure.
to be able to pull it off, it amazes me. It
Sure.
just amazes me.
Well, speaking of 5 years, let's go back to him. I mean, how did it not be, how did Sergeant Bergdahl disappear and how from the face of the media? I mean, no one, I'm not sure you can answer this question. I can't answer
We
it
didn't
either.
hear about him until he was being released,
That's what I'm
right?
saying, yeah. How could that happen? I mean, when somebody's usually gone, don't we all always know about it for the most part?
Well, I don't know. Maybe there are other captors. I mean, they say all the time that people are being captured or missing. I don't know. There were stories. This all came out after his story came out.
Right.
That he was writing letters that he wanted out, and that he did desert. We don't know that as a fact, but that's what it looks like
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't remember hearing about him. I was surprised too. Like, 5 years. I haven't heard about this guy. Now all of a sudden we're hearing about him.
Right.
So that was interesting. It was interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing is he didn't see his parents coming back, and he hasn't yet.
Bleeding, where are they? I mean, you see that all the time,
Yeah.
right? When there's prisons generally. That's a good point. I wonder why that wasn't.
And another thing, there's so many disturbing things about this. I'm wondering how other media outlets are covering it, because I'm watching as much news as I can about this, because I'm seriously disturbed about how the media is playing this out. It seems like you're getting bits and pieces of information every day. The father learning to speak Afghani and was bearded and spoke in loving Afghani terms to him before his capture in letters and things like that. What was that all about? It seemed like he wasn't that way before. Was there an attempt by him to use the language to help get his son back? Is that what happened? Nobody knows.
Right?
It's all plausible. Right? I mean, what else could there be? I have no idea. But, it's funny, the investigating general that they chose to evaluate Bergdahl, his name is Dahl, spelled like Bergdahl is D-H-H-L at the back, so is his.
Right.
It's General Dahl, spelled the same way.
I'm sure more information will come out as this whole thing progresses. I think he's still in Germany, right? In Landstuhl?
Yeah.
At the hospital?
Or was he stateside? Is either just...
Or is he stateside?
He might be stateside now, but he has no... Yeah, stateside now, but he didn't
go home yet.
Didn't go home yet. He's being debriefed, I guess. But what really has gone under the radar is the exchange issue, the 5 terrorists.
Yeah, that's disturbing. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a veteran, maybe part of it because I'm American. I was deployed because terrorists did what they did on 9/11. And here we are releasing 5 for one. I mean, we've had prisoners of war over the years. One prominent name was McCain, John McCain. His father was a general at the time.
Right.
He was a prisoner of war. I don't remember how many years, but I definitely think it was more than 5. I'm thinking 7+ years. And here he had a general who was a dad. They didn't make a bargain for him. And as a parent, just on the flip side of that,
Yeah.
I would want my son back.
Of course.
But we're looking at it as a broad topic here. You know, why 5? Why 5 terrorists? Why couldn't it have been 1?
They were already... yeah, that's right. And worst case scenario, 1 for 1.
Right. He wasn't a high-ranking general or a top secret, whatever guy. Why 5 for 1?
So other terrorists are going to say, is this a 5-to-1 ratio we have to deal with from now on?
From now on?
What's going to
Now
happen?
we set a precedent?
Yeah, we set a precedent. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is not a good idea.
I agree. I agree.
I think it was the Secretary of State said something about if they cause any problems, we'll find them or something.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah. How do they hope to find somebody? I don't know. I mean, these guys they had him. What do they have to look for him again for?
Right. And here's something very interesting. They're saying that now, and they're saying they're not a threat. What happens, next year or 5 years down the line when something happens, God forbid,
Yeah.
and we link it to any one of those 5 people, then what?
Right.
Then what are we going to say?
Yeah, right. You can't take it back.
No.
No, it's very confusing. I don't understand the foreign policy of this administration. And there's a lot of complaints you can make about all administrations in terms of their foreign policy. I'm not picking on this one only, but I'm very disturbed about the absence of the relationship of fear and villainry. These criminals, these people, evil, they're going to kill us. The worst kinds of criminal that there could be are the type that have no fear of their own lives.
No,
And it's inherent in their culture to have no...
And they're trained that way.
Yeah, and we're going to live another day. I don't care if I die,
And they don't. They really don't.
Right, now, when you that's the worst kind of fear anybody could have. The worst kind of enemy.
Or threat, for that matter. Right.
Yeah, no matter how you cut it. This has caused a lot of controversy, obviously. There's not going to be a day, I don't think, that's going to go by. By the way, with so many controversies happening now in the administration with the NSA and the IRS and Benghazi still not unsolved, and Hillary Clinton starting to make an effort to throw herself into the ring for a presidency, there's all kinds of complications that surround each item individually that are interfering in the people's knowledge of what really happened here. When you single this one out because you could single any one of them out and we can have a great discussion about them. But altogether, it's a battle for the news moment. What's going to carry the narrative of the day?
Right. No, absolutely. And as the story unfolds, like you said, we still don't have all the facts. I'm even more interested now to, did he actually desert his unit? And if he
we
did,
still don't know that for sure, I guess. Oh, they say he did. They say
he did. But if he did, let's just play on the pretext that that's the case. Then why should we even trade one prisoner for a deserter? I mean, that's scary.
Right.
I mean, back in the day, what was the penalty for desertion?
Death.
Yeah.
Firing squad.
Firing squad, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's funny
Or
how
prison.
we both know that. Why do we both know that?
You learn it when you're in the military. You
Yeah.
learn in basic training, and you as part of the culture. And maybe that's not the case now. I think sometimes it is, depending on the severity of the desertion. But at a minimum, it would be UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Right,
You'd be in
right.
jail for the rest of your life, or pretty close to that.
You
don't get released and come home to your family.
I don't know if it was the same in your time because mine was earlier, but the uniform, I think it was Uniform Code of Military
Yeah,
Justice.
UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice.
I'm just trying to remember the name, rank, and serial number are all you had to give if you were caught during the Vietnam War. That's what we were supposed to say.
Okay. Yep.
I don't know if it's still the same.
It's still the same thing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I never had to approach that.
We're both here and we made it. Well, there's a segment of these conversations that recently have developed, I think, not stemming from Benghazi, but Benghazi along the trail, that now this Caliphate. Have you heard this word, Caliphate?
No.
It's the joining of all the forces that are in that area, the Syrians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis, the Saudis, all the, I guess you call them, can I say Arab nations as a general?
Yeah, I think so.
There's a name for, and anyway, the name of Caliphate came about, you'll be hearing about it in the news if you haven't already heard about it, that there's going to be a huge joining of forces to make this massive military effort against the infidels, which is basically everybody else but the Caliphate. There seems to be no understanding on the policies of our administration about this subject, nor do they have any want to deal with it. I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it because I keep hearing about it recently. But knowing what I know about evil, that this is going to be evident eventually. It's going to be here eventually. What do we do about it? I mean, what can we do about it?
This administration, like you said, is not very proactive of things like that, and they're more worried about, you know, whatever everybody feels, and it's like a feeling type thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be honest, I just don't have that same, come from that same background.
Right.
And I think the last great president we had was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
When he got the hostages out, he said, get them out, or this is what we're going to do, and they were out the next, you know, within a couple of days. The air traffic
Whereas
controllers,
Carter before that spent years
trying to get them out,
trying to talk to them peacefully, right?
He had traffic controllers who went on strike, and he said,
right,
you can't go, it's against the law, and if you do, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
They called his bluff, and he fired the air traffic controllers. We need that kind of leadership, I think. We really do.
That's exactly what a leader should be doing. But I always felt that President Obama is a very articulate speaker, and he's
definitely a good speaker. I agree.
And he's very much in control of the narrative, and he's also in control of how to deliver messages to sound appealing. But what I also noticed is that there isn't any cognizance of war, military action, protection of our land.
Right.
How about the crossing the border, the immigration issue, and there seems to be a lack of that connection there. And it's evident. Look at what the mess we're in now. Everything on both borders. They're coming across both borders.
Absolutely. And to go back to what you were saying, I remember during the debates, I wanted John McCain at the time. But when you listen to both of them speak, it seemed like
no-brainer.
No-brainer, because Obama seemed to know what he was talking about.
Right.
And John McCain wasn't as articulate or as
right.
What's the word?
Articulate is good enough, I think.
Articulate. There's another word, but I just can't think of it.
Yeah.
And you know. And look at everything that he had said he was going to do, Obama, in regards to the getting to the unemployment and the budget and things like that. He didn't do that, and people voted for him again, which totally blew my mind.
Right, I know. I know.
So that was really interesting.
Yeah, the last one blew my mind because I think that what the country needed more than anything else is business management person, because we were already suffering under economic duration. I mean, this is a little off the topic, but basically that's what happened at that time. And had we changed at that moment, I'm not convinced that he would have done better in this area, but he knows more than Obama seems to know. He seems to be more in control over that issue.
Absolutely.
International affairs.
In regards to like being a good leader, even Bush, who was a Republican when 9/11 happened. I mean, that happened in September, and we didn't get there until March. To go back to Reagan, he'd have been there September 12th.
That's right.
You know, I mean, and then he kept giving warnings. Okay, if you don't do this, we're going to come. If you don't do this, we're going to come.
Right.
And we were deploying, and we were in Germany, and we were all over the place. And 6 months later, and then they said there was no weapons of mass destruction. Don't you think that during that 6 months they took him and hit him, and destroyed him? What they had to do?
I
of
know.
course they had him.
And by the way, that wasn't one person. That was the entire Congress who voted for that. You should know that Congress in general at that moment in time was I think it was a Democratic Congress. They all agreed that the weapons of mass destruction were there.
Oh, they were there.
They said it was there. Now here we are later, a year or two later, they blame Bush for that. It was the funniest thing. I can never figure out how that happened.
But not only that, but everybody seems to forget that the reason why we went there is because they wouldn't allow it as part of the agreement to allow inspectors in there to see what was there. Right. So if they didn't have anything, they would have more, come on, inspectors, come on in. But they didn't. So during this 6 month period, when all these threats were being made, they did whatever they did. They hit him or destroyed him or buried him or whatever they did. I don't think for a second that they were never there. Absolutely not.
Well, let's go back a little bit towards what you would do if you were captured. The reason why I'm asking you this question is because, like in my case, I think the name, rank, and serial number, I don't know whether we would survive from the Viet Cong. I don't know. And from your perspective, I'm not sure we would have been able to survive. They don't give a crap about name, rank, and serial number.
Right.
But that's what we were basically schooled as. But when you're in a foxhole or you have your other soldiers with you, knowing that one was apparently all the soldiers agreed that he was a deserter before they said anything else. They all asked one by one, did he desert? And they all said that he did.
There's got to be some truth to that, right?
This is the problem I have, is because I can't imagine they'd all make it up. I mean, do you remember before there was a group of people, I forget what it was, on the conservative side against Obama's first term. I can't remember the name. But anyway, to make a long story short, they ganged up and supported together and said something was true about some statement. I'm wasting my time talking about this because I can't remember it, but the fact of the matter is unification of thought and trust are important. And you need to join forces with trust when you're a group in combat.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to trust. Would you have been able to trust this fellow is something that I don't see how you could.
No. If in fact it's true that he did desert, then...
He walked away willfully, apparently.
Right.
That's the record.
Do you care if he's one of the members of your unit, let's just use you, for example, or me.
Yeah.
If that's what he did, do you care where he is? I don't.
No, back in my days, you shoot him in the back.
But if you didn't get that far, and you didn't get to do that,
but
and
you
he's
certainly
gone,
don't trust him.
Do you care as a POW for 5 years or 15 years? Do you care?
You take him off the front line.
Absolutely.
You report him to his office and you take him off the front line. I'm curious about Bergdahl's not want to reunite with his parents.
That's a little strange,
recently,
right?
It's very strange. What do you think of that?
It's strange. Not only does he want to reunite, but his parents talked about they were going to fly to be where he was.
Yeah.
But they haven't yet. And you think your son's a POW for 5.5 years? How fast are you going to want to see him? You'd put him in Germany, right?
Of course.
When he first got there. So that whole thing is very strange. Absolutely.
But you have heard about the soldiers complaining about how they felt, right? Did you see the interviews about the soldiers?
I haven't seen the interviews with soldiers. I just been reading the papers and things like that. So I haven't seen the actual interviews.
Well, reading is about the same thing, I guess, as seeing it, except the faces are there. But I believe that they had a situation where they were compromised, and the unit was compromised. I heard afterward, and according to a former guest we had on the show, it said that the Times had indicated that wasn't true, that these people claimed that he did trade. He was a traitor. That he had these issues, and was talking about it all the time, and that people died searching for him.
I heard that also.
Denied that.
I heard even before that happened, he was sending letters home and to other people stating his displeasure with, being there and wanting to get out, and which all backed up the facts in regards to him being a deserter. So it'd be interesting to see when everything actually comes out. It'd really be interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out the whole thing.
And how does Hillary and Obama back up the 5 terrorists for deserter? And not only that, but Obama went against the Congress when the law was if they do something like that, he's got to give 30 days notice, but he didn't. He just went and okayed the transfer.
Oh yeah.
He didn't give Congress even
notice.
That's
right. Congress never had a chance to vote on that.
Never had a chance to vote on it.
How come no one's upset about that?
I am.
It's just amazing how many things have happened. Let's talk about Gitmo. The reason why I'm bringing the subject up is because that's where those 5 terrorists that were in trade came from. Right. Gitmo was supposedly a station to house those criminals that were against us, were going to kill us, and whatever they could get, and they put them all in this one place. Right. There's an awful lot of talk. I know the Obama administration wanted that to be disappeared, so that they wanted that to go away.
Yeah, which I thought was ridiculous also.
Now, I still do, but why is it that he was able to do that? Take the 5... somebody did that. Who did that? Took the 5...
I don't know what power he had to do that without Congress's authorization, but in his quest to close Guantanamo Bay...
Right, because it is a quest.
That's part of
what
his
he's doing. That's
mission.
right.
I mean, there are people, which I don't understand, being deployed for this and other missions like that, is that, they're terrorists and they're people too, and you can't do this to them, and it's inhumane, and wasn't inhumane what they did on September 11th? I mean, please, I just don't get that sentiment.
Someday, I don't get the sentiment either, and I think that's one of the biggest problems we have with the military.
Maybe we're not being supported. I mean, it was worse in Vietnam, I guess, when they all came back, and
we were treated very roughly when they came back. What I'm getting is the whole entire thing about war is a very dangerous topic when it comes to civility, because it's not civil. War is for killing people and breaking things and winning something. Right. What we have now isn't that. It's not that.
No, it's
kind of a retreat. It's let's let this thing go away. It's all going to be all right someday. And I just never feel like I can't align myself up with the thought pattern that an administration would have that would be like this one, especially from what they did at Gitmo. That was a good idea to keep them there.
Absolutely, I agree.
I thought it was a great idea.
I don't see anything wrong with that. And
But a lot of people on the political left, if I can choose that subject, would say that they still should get rid of it. What's going to happen with all those people if they got rid of them? Look what's going to happen. What's going to happen?
you know, and the other hot topic of that was how they were treating the prisoners, how they were getting information from them. And
Right.
you can't do this, and you can't do that. And what are you supposed to do? Oh, you don't want to tell me? Okay, would you like a steak sandwich
Yeah,
for
would
lunch?
you- yeah, would you rather
Because
ice
you
cream
know,
or steak,
how are you
yeah.
going to get information out of these people? I mean, it's just
Interrogation
amazing.
is also not a stance on the political left either. They would like not to punish anybody, not to
Ask them nicely, and if they don't want to tell you, okay, right?
Yeah, everything is okay.
Yeah.
That's what I meant about in the beginning of the show when I talked about the lack of understanding of that evil exists. There's a huge lack on that side of the political side that thinks that evil doesn't exist. That these
or they're being ignored, or they're, I don't know what the word is. I just, again, we talk about the sentiment and not understanding that. I don't understand the sentiment towards
Right.
terrorists. I don't get that at all.
No, I don't either. I'm having trouble with myself. I did a program, you should know, a few months after 9/11. This is going, how many years? That's 13 years ago. And I had an Arab, I had a Jew, I had a priest, and I had 6 people all lined up in a program, and they all said, unified, one down the row, and I was the last person to speak, that we should allow people to come across the borders anyway, because America was founded on that. You'll still hear that argument on the left, and I agree with that sentiment of America was founded on immigrants. But obviously the immigrants that are coming here are no longer the same type that came here.
Absolutely.
All
They
right.
have other motives.
They have other motives, and their motives are not checked. And because they're not checked, there's a weakness in the mind that says it's okay.
Absolutely.
There's a weakness in the mind that says it's okay to let anybody cross the border, because if it continues, all these people coming across now from Mexico are not all Mexicans. There has been some people of Arab descent that look a little bit like
Right.
that, and they've come, especially in Michigan,
And isn't that going to be, no matter what,
crossing the Canada and Michigan border, not so much on the south.
no matter what program you put in place, nothing's going to be 100%. But in an interim, you got to be aware of these things, and so you have to have these things in place where it's not just free reign, but where do you stop it, and how do you effectively manage it? It's an important issue.
Right, you know, it's all connected to me. Like the Bergdahl issue is just every time something like this happens in the military, I go, why the heck are we still doing these stupid things that don't work? I mean, we're actually retracting from the world. We have less of a presence, we have less power, we're considered to be weak by most countries, and now weaker certainly than we were.
Well, because the military is a lot stronger in these other countries because they're mandatory, right? The
Yeah.
men and women are Israel and Turkey, and I don't know what other countries,
Yeah.
England, it's mandatory that you serve X amount of time in the military. In America, it's not. And with the budget cuts and the military being drawn down, I mean, I was in active duty from 81 to 91 and reserves from 95 to 2005. Their base is closing down all over the place because there's no money. Right, there's money for the congressmen to get that 200% pay raises and
Yeah.
all these other things you want to spend money on. But all these bases are closing down. I've been
Can we
about
agree-
3 or 4 bases that don't even exist anymore. What happens now if there's a war and we don't have the military? The reserves aren't enough.
The left says, and this is the only place I agree with the left on this issue, is that there are too many bases in the world. Not necessarily,
Really?
not necessarily there. I mean, let's face it. We don't. How many bases do we have here in America? I think there's about 60 or 70 bases in America, something like that,
I
or
don't
more.
know, but I was
Could be more.
the last base I was stationed at. Well, was Texas. That's still there. They were talking about closing down Dulles Air Force Base,
What, Bliss?
which is a big
yeah.
MAC base,
Oh.
military airlift command. Well, they call it different now. There's different terms. But I was at Griffiths Air Force Base, was a big SAC base, Strategic Air Command. They closed that place down. There's tumbleweeds rolling through the streets in Rome, New York right now. My daughter, my son-in-law, my 2 grandsons live up there because that's where my ex-wife was from. It's a big difference when you close bases like that. There's a lot of bases that I can name that are closed overseas and stateside.
Right,
These
right.
are people that lose jobs, economies that lose business because Congress says, well, there's no money, but I have enough for a 200% pay raise. We don't have enough in the military. So what happens, God forbid, if there's
That was
another
wrong too. I
major
mean,
war?
they always felt the same thing about the politicians getting more money for things they can't do. I mean, I just love it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like no matter what happens, that's not right. But the only place I agree with their stance on the left stance on that is that there are too many bases. I'm not telling you that there's some strategic ones that should be evolved, but there are too many that aren't being used or funded. that aren't being utilized properly either. The kind of wasteful
Well,
bases.
shouldn't we
Not the big ones, you know.
Shouldn't we utilize them? I mean, is there
I don't
such thing
know.
as too many when other countries' military is much more in numbers and volume than ours is?
Only by person, but we have more people. I'm not sure because we're another ocean away. I mean, the missiles situation makes it a little more difficult for somebody to attack us with missiles without us knowing it. But if there were a war between Turkey and Afghanistan, it wouldn't take very long before the bombs hit the ground.
Right.
So I mean, I think there is some relationship there that we need to address on that subject. So one quick one about the narrative of Bowie and taking away from, or his father taking away the narrative, I should say, from his son by making kind of a clown of himself. He let his hair grow. He speaks Afghani. What is he doing? I mean, I'm only trying to get to this because a lot of people are stunned by it. If you haven't seen it on TV, you have to take a look at this.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it on TV. I heard about it. It was very interesting. Why did he do that? Is he in cahoots with?
That's what worries
That's scary.
me.
Yeah.
That worries me. I think that this whole thing is going to play out in a very bad way. I don't see anything good happening to this.
I don't either.
Unless he's a real nut, then we can play it. Then we can say, okay, he's a nut. Let's get him out of it. Let's get him away from the TV. Let's get him away from the narrative.
Is he somebody who just kind of did this because he thought that was a way to get his son back? Hopefully that's all it was.
Yeah. But I mean, for anyone who's seeing this program who needs to know that whether evil exists or not in terms of the Middle East area propelling themselves forward to try to monopolize us, you can be assured that has been happening since long before 9/11. It started a long time ago. Way back in the Carter administration was when we were first attacked, and no one is finishing this off, and that's why it keeps coming back at us. The only difference between what happened now and what happened then is that they're now housed here. They're building mosques everywhere,
right.
and as a nation, we need to get ready for an internal war. Now, you can say, oh my, this guy's a conspiratorialist. Reality is what it is. If you're not seeing the signs, then you're making a big mistake.
And because it's easier for them to do things like that, and
they'll be here.
it's easier to hide, and it's just
they can make the
scary.
demonstrations hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a lot to concern ourselves with, and one of the best ways we can do it is to make sure that they don't cross the borders so easily, that we keep people out until we know who they are, and then we have to know a little bit more about our immigration issue.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's got to be some checks and balances. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I want to thank you very much. I appreciate that, Jeff Boone, mediator, Air Force veteran, and I hope that the world changes for us. The political trends are rapidly changing in this world, and they're very hard for everyone to keep up, and I hope that this program has given you all a way and a measure to look at what is and isn't evil, because your evil is here. Your evil has been developing against us for quite some time, and we don't have really the great consciousness in the current administration and several other administrations in the past to deal with this issue. It's time for us to get very serious, mobilize, concern ourselves how we can defend ourselves, because the lack of protection is becoming obvious. Do not think we are doing enough at this point in time in the year 2014 to protect your children going forward. Your children are in big trouble. Thank you very much for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.